the light of who you are. So let there be light.
Now, Jeremy was just sharing with us that he'd been at a wedding yesterday, was it, Jeremy? Yeah. And throughout our society over this last weekend, there'd be a number of weddings, wouldn't there? And when I look around this room here, I can see a few of you would be married. And I think back over our lifetime and we've been to a few weddings. And you know what happens there, don't you? There are a whole lot of promises made. One of them is the promise to love each other. I guess if I was looking back at when we stood there quite a number of years ago and I promised that of you, I don't know what I was promising.
We had no idea.
I had no idea of what would be involved in loving Paula. And, pardon? I missed that one. So anyway, I don't know what was involved in that because we've had a lifetime. I mean, Paula mentioned to you, we got into this because we needed to. And so our journey, I was just looking at singing that song there, how great God is and he has been to us. And so when we make those promises back then when we were getting married or we see someone else do that, I've always been fascinated. Because a lot of times the pastor will then go in and just give a little homily and it'll usually be about love. What is love? We go out of the church here this morning and there's someone over the street there and they came up to us and they said to us, what is love? How would you answer them? It's not a rhetorical question. I'm asking.
You can talk.
Paul is actually going to write your answers up here on the whiteboard.
What was that? Give and take.
Thank you. That's a good one.
Oh, I wrote take in capitals and give in small letters. That's probably not good, is it?
Are you trying to say something? No.
Commitment.
Thank you. That's lovely. Yep. Compromise. Very good. Who said that one?
Wow.
Unconditional.
Wow.
Thank you.
What was that one?
I just want that unconditional one. Thank you for that. That's a powerful thing, isn't it? Unconditional love. Can we offer that to someone else? I think about that a lot in my own life and what I offer Paula and those that are close to me. So, any others?
Sacrifice.
Thank you. Unselfish caring. Yeah. Now we're drifting into 1 Corinthians 13, aren't we? A little bit. So, you've been well schooled. Yes, please.
Trust.
I
Lovely.
like that one. Yeah.
Patience.
Long-suffering, forbearance. There, you've got it. You're in there.
They're all coming.
Faith.
Faith.
That's an interesting one. You know, at the end of that passage in Corinthians, it says, faith, hope, and love. These remain. You know, when you think about that, God's saying that faith, hope, and love are immortal. They'll always be with us. That's quite amazing. And then he says, and love is the most powerful one. So I love what you've described to me here. I used that term, didn't I? We do use it a little bit without a lot of power in it. And I would say that what you've conveyed to me is the expression of love. And Paul has put them all up here in the top of the tree. What I'm after is, what's the root? What is love? Not the expression of it. What is love? Anybody?
God.
Thank you. I mean, that's 1 John 4, and we'll get to that. Yes, God is love. But again, so, what is it?
Respect.
Yeah, that's an expression of love. What is that? I mean, is it a warm, fuzzy feeling?
Not always.
A decision. Commitment, yeah. An emotion. Yes, now I think we're drifting down into this area. When you think about it, if someone was to ask you what love is, it's not easy, is it? I actually like what the Bible says about it, and we're just going to have a look at what it says in 1 John 4. You're going to read that?
So God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. This is how love is made complete amongst us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love.
You hear what John is saying there? First of all, he says God is love. That's the beginning. In the very heart of God is this place where love is. In Ephesians, it says that God adopted us into his family, and because of that, we received his very nature. So you and I, now because we've breathed out faith, have the capacity to love like God unconditionally. So this love is a very powerful force. Then John says, perfect love casts out fear. I'm going to give you a definition of love that has really, really helped me. Love is the absence of fear. I understand fear. I know what fear is like. It also says in that passage there that the fear of punishment is cast out by love. And there's an illustration in the Bible of a character that we all know. And we go back into the beginning in the book of Genesis, and it's Adam. God has given Adam and Eve this wonderful garden to live in, and he had one thing that they weren't to do. They were not to partake of this particular fruit. And you know the story, they do. And so what happens then is it's almost as if, well, the world did change, just like that. It was like a blanket coming down out of the sky, and it just changed everything. Shame descended upon them. And so here Adam is, and he's full of fear because he's afraid of the result, the consequences of the decision he's made with Eve. And God comes into the garden and he says, Adam, where are you? Now that's an unusual thing for God to say, isn't it? I mean, he's God. He knows where Adam is. I love that phrase because it tells me that God is a rescuer and a repairer of relationships. He could have gone into the garden and said, well, gee, Adam, you know what the consequences of that decision was, don't you? What you do that for? Why? But he goes there and he says, where are you? And the answer that he extracts from Adam, I think, is profoundly impacting on you and me and the rest of humankind from that point on to this very present time and into the future. This is Adam's response. He said, I heard your voice and I was afraid. There's no love there. When fear comes into our life, love goes out. When love is present in our life, fear cannot exist. I heard your voice and I was afraid because I was exposed. I was there for all to see. I was open. And then what Adam says is, I hid. Fear will cause us to hide from each other. Fear will cause us to hide from each other in this relationship.
I'm going to introduce you to the volcano. I could probably get Jeremy to do this because he knows all about the volcano. Tell me Describe the volcano to me. How is it like a relationship?
How is it like a relationship? Well, from what I remember, just going all back. At the top.
Put him on the spot, Paul. I mean, go on.
At the top, you've got all of this spluttering stuff. You've got the smoke. You've got all that sort of stuff. And then underneath here, you've got what is actually giving power to all of that sort of stuff. Now, how just tell me when to stop.
Yeah, no, that's good. So the power's actually coming from down here.
Surface, yeah.
But what we see is this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Do I have a pen here? Very good.
He's done well, hasn't he? He's a relieved man.
So if I write fear down here, that's where the power's coming from. What might we see up the top? How might that fear be expressed in this relationship?
What about with Adam, Paul?
Anger.
Ah, thank you.
You've got
You're
it.
on.
How else?
Sorry, what was that? Shame.
Shame. Wow.
I
You know, I'm going to put shame down with fear
Shame is very powerful.
because shame gives this its power as well. Hiding.
Yes.
Which
What's
is
another word for hiding? Guys, I just forget the women are here. How do we hide? Shed. We go to the shed. Thank you. We go to the shed.
withdrawal.
Withdraw. I like go to the shed. I'm onto that one.
Maybe I should talk to the women. How do we tend to express our fear? Blame, absolutely. Blush.
You're on a roll. You're doing well.
Silence is a really good one. Yep, you've got it.
I've never noticed you being silent, Pop.
No, I tend to be more critical.
Thank you for your honesty.
And I can very quickly get into contempt, I'm sad to say. And you've felt the brunt of my contempt many times. So I'll put them up there. That's just a few, but you've obviously expanded that, and there's more in terms of that. Barry, how do you hide in our relationship?
It was interesting that whoever it was said we go to the shed. I mean, I withdraw. That's probably my go-to, and I'm really self-protective. And so I hide by closing up and not allowing you to go past this.
Which is really hard because it's hard to talk about stuff when you're closed down.
Yeah. And there's something about, if I do talk about it, there's an incredible sense of vulnerability that I'm really afraid of.
So what is the vulnerability that I might do this criticism and contempt? Is that the vulnerability, or is it more coming from in you?
Yeah. You know, when you say that, I think of something that happened, it would have been a couple of weeks ago. It was my birthday, and you gave me this gift.
Oh, yes,
Remember
I remember.
it? And it was a pillow cover with pictures of my granddaughter on it. And you gave it to me in the morning, and I looked at it, and I just flicked it aside. And
And I remembered saying to you, well, that was underwhelming, wasn't it?
I realised then that I'd made a mistake, and so I started to close up. But you know what happened internally for me is I thought, she doesn't know me. That's not something, I mean, I love the pictures and that, but I don't like that sort of thing. She doesn't know me. And I wasn't gutsy enough to bring it to your attention at that time. But a few weeks later, we were doing a marriage presentation on Zoom, and you were so tender with a guy on the other end there, and you saw him. And I started to cry.
I remember.
You didn't see that, I don't think, but because you saw him, but you didn't see me. And so I took the courage and I brought that to your attention. And we had a bit of a conversation about it. Can you remember?
I can remember the conversation, and even though there are all sorts of other things behind that I was able to tell you later, I really felt that pain in that moment, and I genuinely apologise to you because I saw your incredible longing to be seen. You do so much for everybody and for me, but often I see what you do and not behind that to who you are, and that's your longing.
Yeah. The interesting thing in that conversation, though, is you asked me what you could do that would help me to be seen.
What'd you say?
Yeah,
Refresh me.
I look back at that and I regret my response. My response was to move straight to that place. And so what had happened is usually in that situation, I close up. You invited me to do that. But in reality, what I did is I moved over there and I started giving you suggestions about what you could do to help me feel known or safe. And it didn't open me up. Do you remember what you did?
I think it was just what I said. I just said, let me have a shot at this. You actually long for me to see you.
You see, it touches me. You actually touched me and said, let me have a hunch at that. Is it you actually want me to see you, not what you do? And it was just such an important place for me at that time. And instead of that, I did that. And I let you see into me and what was going on. And that was a very powerful conversation for me. And
You came out of hiding.
I did. I did. And so the self-protection, the movement to blame, the fear of vulnerability, in that moment, they were nullified. And I think fear went out of the internal part of me and love was able to express itself. And I felt that very strongly toward you.
And I felt it on my part. And just reflect for a moment in your own closest relationship, and some of you may not be married, but think of your closest relationship. How do you hide? And what would it look like if you were vulnerable? So just reflect on that for a second. I mean, I don't know if anybody's game enough to actually reply to that. That would take a bit of vulnerability. Is there anyone brave that would like to share?
I do things that cut off my thoughts.
Oh, wow. And how does that work for you?
I like that.
Yeah. It protects you, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean, you don't always want to be thinking things, so I play games on the computer, and I can just go somewhere else.
Okay. Anyone else?
For me, love is also freedom. In the sense that Robin and I have been married almost 40 years, and we are chalk and cheese. We are nothing like each other. We have so many interests that don't connect with each other. But within our relationship, we have that freedom to still indulge in those. Like I ride motorcycles, I don't motorcycles. I like to go caving. I don't like to be in cave. And, Robin likes to go to coffee shops and she likes to go away with her girlfriends. Within our relationship, we have that freedom to pursue those things. But in the middle, then we have family, which draws us together.
But it sounds like you're not threatened by the other the other doing that. Whereas in our early relationship, I think we would have been threatened by those sorts of things because it's not what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, yeah. I love that
I do
word.
have my shed, and I go there regularly.
And do you let him do that, Robert?
Without
Yeah, without guilt, eh?
I always say to men, it's okay to have the shed as long as you walk into the shed, you know what you're doing it for. And if it's to hide, then it's recognising that when we're hiding because of our fear, love loses its power in our life. And we're just like Adam. From the very beginning, we don't like that exposure. We're afraid of it. And so our movement is to hide. And it's recognising the hiding and asking God, what can I do about that? Because I want to love without fear.
And I love that word, freedom. Such a lovely word. And when you're actually loving from a place of fear, and I'm going to interpose shame on that as well, love becomes very transactional. It's a duty, it's a function, it's performance. And I was just talking to somebody just this week, and she just was a rescuer. She rescued everybody. And in some sense, she wanted the same for herself, but it didn't happen. She'd be there for everyone. And she'd become resentful because everybody's asking more and more and more of her. And her love was performance-driven. And we were able to talk about the fear beneath that, and that was blocking the light, the love that was really in her heart, the place where Jesus lived. And she had had some very painful experiences with her mother as a child. And her mother had said, what's in your heart does not matter. You just be there for people, for other people. And it was quite sad for her. But for the first time, she said, I'm quite excited. I can see a different path. What happens when we love from a place of the absence of fear?
When there's no fear in our love, these expressions of love, they take on power, they take on freedom, they take on grace. They soar like an eagle because they are empowered by love and the absence of fear. So there's a massive difference. I don't know about you, but sometimes Paul and I get into this space where we examine what is the message that we got from our parents, the one that we perceive that we received. I actually went back to my mum and shared it with her. The message I got with her was, Bass, you can do better. That was aspirational, wasn't it?
She was really pleased. She thought that was a great message.
She was
to give
really
you.
pleased when I shared that with her. But then I was able to talk to her a little bit about how that impacted me. You see, as a little bloke, I suddenly realised, well, hold on, if I can do better, there's something wrong with who I am. And I started working really hard to be good, to keep in connection with Mum. And when Paula talks about that girl that she was speaking to, that's me. And you see, what I used to offer to Paula is what I could do for her. And yet behind that was this intense longing for her to know me, not for what I did, but for who I am. And there was a fear in allowing her to see that. Because what if she saw who I was, apart from what I did, and I wasn't good enough? I would fear rejection. And so this area in our life is incredibly important. I love that John says that God is love and that his very spirit indwells us and we have this capacity for love. But I also know that going back into Genesis, we've been set up from the very beginning to go to fear and to hide. And so how do we reverse this sort of stuff?
Well, another thing, I think what happens, let me see if I can get this, to love without fear, Well, we're learning the more that we're able to do that and move towards it, there's an intimacy there. Because we have conversations like we just had. I'll just get the next slide. There we
Well, what I was going to do is ask you, what would the absence of fear look like for you in our
I
relationship?
thought I was going to get away with not saying anything.
No, I think we should have the female perspective.
Because of my family background, which was traumatic as well, I kind of loved with this come here, go away, go away, go away. And so over the years I've pushed
What sets that up though? How come?
Well, it's not safe. You're not. They're the person that can be safest for me, but you're the person that can hurt me the most as well.
Yeah.
And so, if I hide in fear that you will respond in a rejecting way, I can stay safe, but I don't have that intimacy.
But there's something also in you, and I've seen it again and again, this movement towards the desire to be loved by another and to be wanted. And it can be so confusing, that double message.
Oh, absolutely. And it's only really the last few years I've become aware of the depth of how that has hurt you and our children. And even fairly recently, I saw myself doing it when we were talking about something that had happened with our daughter. And my first response is to push you away before you reject me or dismiss it or not feel what I feel is important. And so I do that I get critical, I get contemptuous, and it always worked so well in the past because you'd take the bait and you'd move away. But you're onto me now.
Paul, it has taken years for me to stop that movement, that hurt. I'm out of here.
And I would try and hurt you, I'm ashamed to say, because I didn't trust that you would actually want to come into my world and try and understand what it was like for me. And so I'd punish you beforehand for not wanting to do that. It's really twisted, isn't it?
Yeah, and so when I would get that communication, the fear in me would say, close up shop. There's a potential to get really hurt here. And so I can...
And that reinforces mine.
Yeah. So it was like a cat chasing its tail. We could never break that cycle. Yeah, and it has only been in more recent years.
And that was what was going around the top of the volcano. That was our expression of our fear. And we get stuck in that cycle that just went round and round and round. We've learned how to get off. We don't always do it well, but we learn how to get off that cycle and actually have conversations below the volcano.
The volcano has been a big help for me because there's a logic in it. And I can remember the first time I learnt that beneath anger was hurt and rejection. And I had a communication with my son. He was very angry and I said to him, someone's hurt you, haven't they? It changed our relationship, just that little sentence. And we began to talk below the volcano.
And in that conversation we were having about our daughter, I was actually brave enough, instead of doing the pushing away, to say, I want to talk about this, but I feel like you're dismissing it and you don't really want to know. And you just said, well, I do. And we had a really good conversation, an intimate conversation around that.
Yeah, I think when we can love without that presence of fear, there's a difference in the way we talk to each other. And
we're getting better at it.
We are, yeah.
And I think it's so related to our relationship with God, isn't it? The more that we relate to him without fear, the more that we can do it with one another.
Yeah, I saw that with Adam. He was abjectly afraid of the punishment, which is what John was saying. And God's telling us love is the absence of fear. There's a wonderful passage in the Song of Songs on love that I just get you to throw up there. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm, for love is as strong as death. Its jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like a blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot sweep it away.
That touches some longings, doesn't it?
When I said I do to Paula, the desire in my heart was to end my life knowing that I had loved another and that I had been loved. God says for each one of us, that's potential. We have that because God is love, and love is the absence of fear.
So here's just an opportunity to say I do once again in a different way. So go away and think about this. You may even like to have a conversation with the person that's closest to you. But relationally, what fear do I need to confront? For example, we've talked about the fear of being vulnerable with you, the fear of not being heard or dismissed, the fear of being hurt again. What is that for you? So take that away and take it to God, and maybe you can be courageous enough to share that with somebody that you really care about.
I mentioned to you that one of my fears was this fear of vulnerability. I was raised in a home, I had two brothers, and so, that was not a place where boys would go, vulnerable places. I don't think it's a place where women go either. But I had this fear of vulnerability. There's a woman called Brené Brown, and she does a lot of talks on psychology, and she does TED Talks. One of them is on vulnerability. If you ever get the chance, have a look at it. But she was doing a presentation, and it was being signed for the deaf people in the audience. And the people that were doing the signing came to her and they said, "Are you going to use any words that we may not know or be familiar with?" And she thought and she said, "Well, I'm going to use vulnerability. What's the sign for that?" And one of them said, "The sign for that is this, weak at the knees." And Brené Brown turned to her and said, "That's not how I see vulnerability. Vulnerability takes courage. In vulnerability, there is no fear. It's a choice." And she said, "Have you got another sign for that?" And do you know what they said to her? They said, "Yeah, we do. This is the sign." I would love to think that perhaps today the Spirit of God might touch our hearts and that we might go out there with the attitude of this, not that one. God says if we are willing, He is love, and that can transform us from a place of fear to a place of power and grace.
Just before we pray, just do that and see what it feels like. Feels really good, doesn't it? Scary, but good. You can pray now.
No, I've got permission. Father, thank you for our time together this morning. I want to thank you that you are love, and because you are love, we can love without fear. I thank you that love is the absence of fear. And the reality is, Father, if we are willing and we ask, you supply. You supply the courage. You supply the movement towards openness, because this is in your heart and it's your desire for each one of us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you for your listening and your participation.
Lord, I want to be a world changer, be a city on a hill that shines in the dark. eyes of who you are. So let